Bye. Okay.
Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. I'm accompanied by Yudi, who is a carnivorous plant expert. We actually have an episode before this where we talk about the history and their natural habitat of the Nepenthes. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about how to care for them in a general sense. Now keep that in mind, everybody's environment is unique, so we don't have an exact formula of how to keep your Nepenthes alive and thriving, but this is a general guide and you are encouraged to do your own research before you get down and dirty with your Nepenthes care.
Agree.
Yeah.
Welcome, and it's such a great opportunity to be accompanied by Sean. And first of all, pardon if my English is not very good. I think that the trinity of the basic care of carnivorous plant is mostly light, soil mix, and humidity. So let's talk about light first. For Nepenthes, mostly in their natural habitat or environment, they can grow in full sun. Contrary to popular belief, usually we use paranet or shade house, like 60% paranet or even 80% paranet, but in their habitat, they can grow tall beyond the vegetation and they reach a full sun condition like this. But I usually recommend for beginners, and usually we buy from another seller, the plant is in the shipment stress and else, I recommend to put them when it's arrived in the shade house first, like in the east face windowsill or east face terrace or east face garden and using paranet. After the plant is stable like this, you can gradually try to make a full sun condition, and maybe you can give the video about it, like in my condition when the plants grows in full sun.
Yeah, but hang on, can the highlands be in full sun as well?
Yes,
They can.
but one thing we should notice, and it's very important, please learn your Nepenthes first. Is it lowland, intermediate, or highland? Like Sean said, lowland can be grown in full sun when they grow in lowland condition. But if you live in lowland condition and try to grow highland plants, don't try it in full sun condition.
Yeah, they may burn because I think in highlands the full sun has a bit more of a cooler climate and also a more different angle from the
Yes,
sunlight.
correct.
Yeah.
And by science, usually they say that highland Nepenthes is more resistant to UV because of the higher elevation. The radiation of the UV is stronger, right?
Yeah. So we have some clips to show the condition in which you have grown your highland Nepenthes, which is completely indoors in a cooler setting and in a controlled light environment and humidity and stuff, which is different from the way that he grows his lowland type species.
Yeah, because I live in Jakarta, it's very hot.
Yeah.
And after the light, as Sean said, we can use natural sun or grow light, and we're gonna go to soil mix. For soil mix, it's also unique, as Sean said before. It's not a fixed formula. You can learn, you can adapt, you can try, you can improvise, depends on your environment. But usually, for easy lowlander Nepenthes, we can use this mix. This is the mix of cocoa pit and then burn rice husk, or in Indonesia we say sekam bakar, and we also use Osmunda fern. Osmunda fern is the chopped roots of tree ferns. And why we use this one for Nepenthes? Because it holds water very well and it simulates the condition of bog areas. Here we say gambut or kerangas.
Swampy area.
Yeah, swampy areas.
Yeah.
And as we can see, for some Thailand growers or even famous brand like Borneo Exotics or Exotica plants from Australia, they use pure cocoa husk like this because it's very porous.
Okay.
And then as we can see, like in some of my collection here, For some hybrids or intermediate or highlanders, they like porous soil. So to simulate that condition, I use a mix of stone or minerals. Here I use Kanuma, peat moss, perlite, and a bit of akadama.
And just as a disclaimer, none of these contain any form of nutrients or degradable nutrients.
Yes,
because they don't.
correct.
They thrive in nutrient-porous media.
And one thing that I should note, one of the most common mistake is they always argue that, hey, this soil mix is also used for aeroids or even hydroponics, so it also have nutrients, right? But one thing I should emphasize is the nitrogen content. This kind of mix is very low in nitrogen. So when we say that carnivorous plant lives in poor condition soil, what they mean is poor nitrogen content, not the P and K, just N. This carnivorous plant lives in extreme environment. So besides the relatively low nitrogen, they also live in high tannin condition.
Wow.
Because as you know, tanah gambut or kerangas is rich in detritus or leaf litters, and it's very high in tannin.
Okay.
Normally, for normal plants, tannin is dangerous for plants.
It's acidity, right? High
Yes, acidity, and they can make a stunted growth.
But they actually love it for Nepenthes.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So cocoa product would be very good for Nepenthes.
Because it's high in tannin, sometimes we should wash it.
Yeah.
But for Nepenthes, I don't recommend it, but we can use it directly.
Okay.
One thing we should avoid from cocoa peat or cocoa husk product is not the tannin, like Aeroid community is concerned, but the electronical conductivity or EC, the salt content.
Okay. Oh yeah, it can get salty too.
Yeah, because sometimes the seller use the seawater or salt water to wash the cocoa products, right?
Yeah. And quickly about the watering, because these are different substrates. Does this work for all the Nepenthes species, or do you have, like, how do you figure out which one is right for which types of Nepenthes?
Nice question. For lowlander, I usually recommend this one because it simulates the tanah gambut or kerangas when they live in swampy areas, as we can see here. And for highlanders or intermediate, mostly they live in mossy forest or a cliff like this.
Okay.
So usually they prefer porous soil because as we can see, leaf moss, they grow epiphytically in the trees and it's very porous, right?
Yeah. Are Nepenthes epiphytes?
Yes,
They are.
especially the highlanders.
Okay.
A lot of them are epiphytes.
Cool. And in these substrates, do you want to keep it moist all the time, or do you want to let them dry out? Like, how do you water it?
For lowlanders, I never let them dry. It's very dangerous. And one of the indicator is the leaves. When the leaves is wilty and how do you say it, like deform like this, it's one of the sign that they need more water in the media, the soil mix. But in the highland or the highland hybrids like this one, I simulate a dry cycle.
Okay.
So sometimes I let them sit in water for 1 day, and I just fill the trays after 4 or 5 days later.
So you just let them dry out completely for slowly but completely.
Yeah, slowly but never completely.
Oh, never completely. So there's still variation
Yeah.
and okay.
Like epiphyte orchid.
Okay.
You have to simulate the dry spell, right?
All right. So what happens if you grow them in a nutrient-rich soil?
That's a very interesting question. It can be considered as $1 million question in carnivorous plant hobby. So if we reach Nepenthes in fertile soil, by fertile I mean a lot of leaf litter and high nitrogen content. For acclimatized plants or already stable Nepenthes like this, it can. But what happens? What's gonna happen is the plant can reach the vining stage very soon, very fast, and they have a tendency not to form pitchers like this because they form pitchers to seek nitrogen from the insects. But if the roots can get the nitrogen or nutrients, they don't have urgencies to make traps like this. So they can grow very fast without the pitchers, and they're gonna reach maturity very soon. For lowlanders, it can be around 2 years.
Oh, interesting. When you say maturity, it means like to reach up above the canopy to get better light and maybe to flower as well?
Yes, to flower as well and to form the upper.
Okay, because we mentioned in the last episode there's a lower pitcher,
Intermediate,
mid, and then an upper pitcher.
uppers. And one of the reason lot of enthusiasts complain is why my Nepenthes is not forming the pitchers. So besides the nutrients, one of the main factor is the humidity. For them to create pitchers like this, they need a lot of humidity. Usually, for us who lives in tropical areas like Indonesia, we can be considered lucky because usually it's around above 60 RH, right, for humidity. But one thing I can suggest, if you want to grow them indoors or in windowsill condition, I have to make sure they can adapt. So one thing you have to make sure is you can provide low humidity like 50 or even 40, but make them stable. Don't make them fluctuative like this, because it can make them very hard to adapt. So if usually around 6 months or 1 year, they can also adapt in low humidity. But some of the Nepenthes species is notorious for the humidity requirement, so we cannot apply that rules to every Nepenthes.
So would you say that the higher humidity do you have, the more chance that they will put out pitchers?
Correct.
Generally speaking.
To ensure 100%, if you can provide humidity above 80, I can ensure 99% they gonna form the pitchers.
Yeah, and I see that all the examples that we have here, nearly every leaf has a pitcher. Is that normal? Because I don't know that the average grower can achieve that.
I see.
It's because of the humidity, the right care, or
The humidity, the soil, and the lights.
Okay.
And the minor factor is the temperature. Sometimes hobbyists or enthusiasts are questioning why my Nepenthes pitchers coloration and size is different than you. But we grow the same species like this. One of the minor factor is temperature. Like the colder temperature you have, the peristom is gonna be more colorful like this. But if you live in hot areas or non-stable areas, the coloration is considered dull or pale or very greenish.
okay. Interesting. And now here's another question. Do you actually feed the pitchers? Like you have to keep a bit of water in there, right?
I see. Yes.
To keep its digestive fluids going. That's what I know. So make sure it doesn't dry out completely inside.
Yes, correct.
And then if it doesn't have any insects, because sometimes it's not able to catch the insects,
Yes.
do you fertilize it?
Nice question. So if for outdoor plants like this one, usually they attract insects naturally, but some of these plants are grown indoors. I have methods of fertilization or feedings, but one thing that I have to emphasize is fertilization is not for beginners, but how can I say it? Since beginners usually tend to heavily fertilize them because of the urge to, my plant must grow very fast and else. In carnivorous plants, the rules is less is more. So for feedings, usually if the plants is already make pitchers like this, I'm using the slow release fertilizer like this Osmocote or Decastar, and I recommend the low nitrogen content. For this one, I use the 6, 13, and 25. The 6 is nitrogen, and this is the P and the K.
Okay.
And
just
then
put one in there. In the pitcher.
1 or 2 for large pitchers like this.
Okay.
And for alternatives, I use the ground insect like this.
Okay.
So if you are disgusted or maybe you are scared, right, to live insects, you can use tepung serangga or ground insects like this.
Where would you find it, in a pet supply store or
You can find it in the bird store,
bird store? For
bird
food?
hobbyist shop. Yeah.
Interesting.
Usually they use centipedes or crickets or even ants ex croto.
And then you just take a little scoop and it just put it in there.
Or we can mix the flour with waters and using pipettes or syring to inject it.
Actually, that would be the best way to feed them, I think, because
It's natural.
And it's tasty.
Correct.
For them, I think. Yeah.
And I have an advice for Nepenthes that still don't have pitchers like this. The question is how to feed them, right? We can do foliar spray fertilizing and usually I use this brand. I recommend also the low nitrogen content. That's why I use the bloom because the nitrogen content is low.
So you would mix that with water appropriately and then spray it on the foliage.
Yes, and I recommend that we use only 50% or 25% of the recommended dose.
Yeah.
Remember, less is more for
how
carnivorous
often?
plants.
How
I fertilize them around 2 months.
every 2 months.
Every 2 months.
Interesting. Any pest management for these? That's an ironic question.
Because they eat pests, right? Usually. Two of their main enemies is mealybugs in the roots because of the wet condition. As you can see, the mealybugs rarely invades the leaves, but usually they invade the roots because the roots is very wet, especially for lowlander. If we dig this, sometimes we see white things that name mealybug, and the treatment is by normal pesticide like Starkelgy or Furadan. And we can just sprinkle it in the soil. Okay. And if you grow them outside, sometimes they get attacked by nematodes or some kind of worms that parasitize the roots.
Oh, no.
But it's very rarely occurred. And the second one is fungus.
Yeah.
As we can see, this is some kind of Phytophthora, I think. But one thing we should remember, they are plants that adapt in very hostile or extreme environment. So usually they can withstand fungus attack like this. As we can see, it's occur only in several leaves, but the new growth is not affected.
And you did not treat this at all?
Sometimes I treat them, especially in monsoon or rainy season, using systemic fungicide.
Okay, so fungicide spray, but it's not all the time. It's not in your daily routine or weekly routine.
Maybe 6 months per time. And then after that, we can discuss about the orientation of the hobbies, right? Sometimes people prefers to try a big and showy pictures like this, but sometimes, especially female hobbyists, like cutesy picture like this. Or even this one is very famous for female hobbyists, Nepenthes ampullaria. Very cute, right?
Yeah. So would you recommend 5 that are easy to care for someone who wants to try out?
I see. Yeah. The 5 easiest for species, I recommend. The easiest of them all is Nepenthes rainwartiana because it can adapt in lowland and highland situation, and it can grow in anything, even in tanah merah or clay. And then the second one I recommend is Nepenthes mirabilis, and the third one is Nepenthes gracilis, and the fourth one is Nepenthes rafflesiana, and the fifth one is Nepenthes ampullaria. These have the 5 position because usually to shape this kind of picture they need a really high humidity, above 70 and stable.
Yeah, and the ones that you give us are actually species, right?
Yes, species.
But in fact, you actually probably recommend hybrids as something that would be more easier and adaptable. Because usually hybrids have the
hybrid figures.
Of the parents, have the best from both parents.
So for beginners, if you like, unfortunately or maybe fortunately, the one that have big and showy pictures like this is usually intermediate or highlanders.
Yeah.
And to get this kind of shape that durable in urban environment like us, I recommend hybrids.
Okay, can you name like
several of it? This is the first I would recommend so much, Alata truncata. Alata cross truncata.
Okay.
It can reach a big and showy pictures in hot urban environment. And the second one is a hybrid like this one, involving globosa cross ampullaria. And this one also has red variegation because of the anthocyanin, but it can be discussed, right? Because for some hardcore enthusiasts, variegation must be white, but for Nepenthes, this can also consider variegation by anthocyanin.
So this is actually a rare occurrence to have this red sort of variegation, and they're probably a bit more expensive. Maybe a bit slower growing or not?
For this clone, no, because this one doesn't like chlorophyll like the white variegation, but it only has excessive anthocyanin, the red pigmentation. And one advantage for this kind of variegation is they can withstand a very bright and hot sun because of this red pigmentation.
Ah, good to know. And there are other variegated as well. So this is like one.
This is a highland plants, a pure species named Nepenthes gymnampora.
Okay. So the variegation actually do occur in Nepenthes as well.
Of course.
And they're not as often as aroids, because I guess aroids more people are collecting the variegated.
Yeah.
So it's really rare for me to see actually the variegated Nepenthes. Really cool.
I also recommend that something like this one. The hybrid is very complex, involving 4 parentages. It involves Globosa cross Rafflesiana, and then we cross it with Ventricosa cross McFarlane. As we can see, Globosa Rafflesiana is very durable. It can withstand hot environment, and the parentage Ventricosa and McFarlane is highland plants.
So this is in a highland substrate cared for in a highland.
Yeah, because it has highland bloods, right?
Okay. What is the name of this exactly, or is?
There is no cultivar name, but we can say Globosa cross Rafflesiana cross Ventricosa cross McFarlane.
Okay.
Complex hybrid.
It's a mouthful. All right.
And crazy, sometimes for Nepenthes hybrid we can involve 8 parentages.
Yeah.
This is the mutated form of Mirabilis named Mirabilis var echinostoma.
Wow.
It has a toothy or tentacles like peristome like this.
Scary. Wow. Okay.
And as we can see, for outdoor condition like this, one of the best thing besides light is the air circulation. As we can see here, it's very windy, and for some Nepenthes, especially intermediate or highland, they prefer more air circulation like this.
Okay,
kinda like orchids.
So when you're outdoor, this is fine with the light breeze, and when you have them indoors and all, you definitely need to supplement them with some fans.
Yes, with fans or exhaust system like that. They don't like saturated wind or air like that.
We forgot to mention that these lowland Nepenthes were living in water, so they're sitting in these trays of water that is reverse osmosis or rainwater and provided with full sun or partial direct sunlight. So this one is what? Say that again. What is this one?
This is the hybrid involving the grade S globosa named Viking, and the Viking is the female, and the male parent is Globosa cross Ampullaria. You can see why it's named Viking, because the
it's
shape
like a
is
Viking
kinda like
ship.
Viking
My
ship.
gosh. Hi. Okay.
Just come here and you can see one of the biggest Nepenthes ever. Nepenthes truncata,
Oh my gosh.
mouse eater.
Okay, so here basically you have the light set up, this is me, and then
The misting system. As we can see, for basic indoor setup, I have grow lights like this.
which is turned off now.
Yeah, but we turn it off to provide better picture.
Yeah.
Because red coloration and blue coloration tends to disrupt our eyes, right?
Yeah.
And we have a misting right here.
Sorry, it's like flickering now. Light is
Yeah,
flickering.
because of the frame rate.
Yeah.
And because of this, like I mentioned before, a very stable situation like this, because it's enclosed system, we can see one of the most famous Nepenthes, Nepenthes truncata. It's very big, and in cultivation sometimes it traps a mouse and can digest it.
Yeah. Interesting. So in the
It's
care
very
here,
big.
you do want to be more mindful with watering.
Yeah,
So it's not always
because it got humidity from the misting, and I have a giant water tray. As we can see, it's water.
yeah under the, yeah.
And we can see some beautiful one like this.
So these are highlands.
Yeah, this is the cross between two of the most famous Nepenthes, Nepenthes truncata cross Veitchii.
Okay.
And there is another beautiful pictures.
Oh yeah, look at that. What do you call this?
This is a hybrid between Nepenthes truncata cross Edwardsiana. Edwardsiana has very beautiful peristome like this.
Yeah, gorgeous. So you have some of these indoor care here.
Yeah.
For Nepenthes. Are these all highlands, or are there some of them in lowland?
Some are pure highland species, and some are the hybrids of highland species.
Okay. But can lowland species also live like this
Yeah,
indoors in
they
like
can.
a more
But depends on the species, like Renwartiana, they can. But for Gracilis or Mirabilis, they have some deformed features.
so you still recommend them to be more in outdoor
Yes,
setting
like their habitats.
or like a greenhouse type
Yeah,
situation.
of course.
Yeah.
And for indoors, as we can see before, there is a giant enclosure system
inside here, this is to trap the humidity as well.
Yes.
For inside.
to provide stable environment. And as we can see in here, it can be very simple, and that's why sometimes I say that humidity is not as long as it's stable, it's good for them. As we can see, some of the Highland hybrids can make pictures like this.
Even when they're so tiny, they're making pictures.
Yeah, and this is the tissue culture product from Borneo Exotics of Sri Lanka. And one thing we should discuss is the lighting system.
Yeah.
Usually beginners questioning about what is the ideal distance, what kind of lights we should use, the brands. I recommend it doesn't matter as long as you have a lux meter, and I recommend around above of 25,000 lux
Okay.
by lux meter. And sometimes we discuss about which one is better, the white light like this or the RGB white lights like this. In my experience, the Parplis grow light like this is very recommended and give better results compared to white lighting like this. Why? Because as you can see here, the purple grow light like this give more better coloration. I already tried this clone in white grow lights, and the coloration is dull.
Okay.
But we can see more red like this one.
I see. Interesting. Back there.
If you are interested in discussing grow light, you can read a lot of journals already. The main thing is the spectrum, because usually for vegetative growth like this, the shape of the features, the form of the leaves, they need blue lights.
Okay.
And red lights is very important for the coloration of the features and the flowering pace for them.
Yeah.
And also, like we mentioned before, like this one, the tray is not filled by water
Yes.
because I'm trying to simulate the dry spell for the soil mix.
But I can see it's still a little bit moist here.
Yeah.
So after a few days, you will actually fill this tray with water and let
Yes,
them drink that.
correct.
Okay.
And as we mentioned before, like highland plants prefer more dry condition. Like this, you can feel it, right? It's very dry.
Yeah, yeah. And again, these are not mature yet.
Yes, it's not mature.
But is it normal for small Nepenthes to put out pictures like this?
Yes,
Or is it
very
is?
normal.
Oh, that's cute.
Maybe for the propagation, we can see some seedlings.
Okay.
How it germinates.
By the way, can I say hi to our cameraman?
Hi.
Oh, the cat is sleepy.
So thank you, Bagas, for the rest of the episode. We actually had a cameraman help us film. Thank you so much.
No worries.
And this little cat. Hi. This is all for the plant care portion.
Yeah, I think so.
I guess we've covered the care portion of the Nepenthes, but in the next episode, we're going to talk about propagation, which is very, very interesting. I have a lot of burning questions. I've never propagated Nepenthes before, but I know it's possible. So I'm going to pick Yudi's brain in the next episode to see how we can propagate Nepenthes both vegetatively and also by seedlings.
And maybe for the last sentence, if I may add, one of the main key for keeping Nepenthes is patience. When you receive it, don't worry about why Nepenthes not make pictures and else. Just be patient, and through the time, they're gonna adapt to your specific environment. Please don't worry.
Wise words indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Comment down below and send this video a like. These simple acts can help grow the channel a lot as I produce more interesting contents like this. Here are some bonus clips for you guys to enjoy. This is the Nepenthes ampullaria, endemic to Indonesia. They come in many forms and different sizes and shapes. Now this one here is easy to care for, as Yudhishthira has pointed out earlier. They are relatively inexpensive and stay rather compact, so they're good for any living situations. Their pictures remain remain tubby and cute like this, which makes them very good conversation starters. This Ampullaria is blowing my mind. It's putting out these plantlets all along its vine, and they are all putting out pitchers. Look at that. So those tiny little leaves are putting out pitchers, and I believe these can be separated as plantlets, and that's how you propagate them. I hope that these episodes help you build confidence in growing your Nepenthes collection.